Well, let's bring in Michael O'Hanlon to talk more about President Trump's strategy and what he had to say. He's a senior fellow with the Center for 21st Century Security and Intelligence and director of research for the Foreign Policy Program at the Brookings Institution. Michael, welcome to the program. So no mention of troop numbers, no timetable. What stood out to you when you listened to the president?
Right. Well, I'm actually happy that there was no timetable because I think that that's been historically a mistake, because it's given the Taliban in particular reason to think they can outlast us. And it's made the Pakistanis think that we're not dependable and given them an excuse, therefore, to keep the Taliban essentially alive. So going back to your earlier coverage of Trump and Obama and what they both said about Pakistan, historically, even though President Obama was concerned about Pakistani behavior, his annual reviews that threatened an American departure sort of kept alive in Pakistani minds the idea that perhaps they better have a backup plan, namely the Taliban, just in case we left and then the Afghan government collapsed. So I think giving a sense of more indefinite commitment is actually important. As much as Mr. Trump really didn't want to do it instinctively or emotionally, I think it's the only way to send the right messages to the Taliban, to the Pakistanis, and in fact to the Afghan government and citizens who support that government, so they know that we are not going to desert them.
But Michael, what about the American people? Don't they deserve to know how long U.S. involvement will last?
The American people deserve anything they ask for in a democratic debate, but we also can't invent magical solutions. And I think most Americans that I know are smart enough to recognize that we have to face the world as it is, not how we might want it to be. I don't hear a lot of people on the streets of Washington or anywhere else who just bring up this subject and clamor for a departure date certain. That's not the way Americans tend to view these kinds of conflicts. Americans are more hardened by reality. They've watched a lot of these kinds of struggles over the years. They know that we're still in Korea and Japan and Germany. They know that sometimes it takes many years before a government improves and becomes more democratic and more strong. It took Colombia 50 years to bring the FARC to the negotiating table, for example, and they just concluded a peace deal. So no, I think Americans are actually more patient than we give them credit for. And I think in this case, they actually will accept what's become a much lower priority in American politics. They will accept the idea of a modest level of U.S. commitment as long as we protect this country in the process.
And if the U.S. does actually decide to send extra troops to Afghanistan, as it's been reported, would it make a difference and really help break the current stalemate against the Taliban? Hasn't this already been tried before, Michael, in previous administrations?
Great question. I don't expect an outright victory. I think that what you can hope for is a shift in the momentum. So you use the word stalemate. That's perhaps correct, but it's also arguably correct that the Taliban have been gradually making progress for the last 2 years or so. And the Afghan government is now estimated to control only about 60% of the country. It previously had controlled about 70%. And the Taliban controls about 10%. The other 30% is up for grabs. So what I think we'd like to see the Afghans able to do is to gradually take back some of the districts, some of the key areas, and not necessarily win the war anytime soon, but shift the momentum so that, again, the Afghan government perhaps can control, let's say, 65 or 70% of the country. That could have a number of benefits, but in the short term, it will deprive the Taliban of the narrative that they are clearly winning.
Michael O'Hanlon, thank you so much.